every football fan, right? I think there's like a critical period of their life that they place like outsized importance on based on when they watch. It's probably like ages 10 to 13. And for me, that coincided with your prime at Stanford. So it's pretty surreal to have you on here because you're one of those guys that I think of it was like Saquon Barkley and Lamar Jackson and Bryce Love is one of them. So it's very cool to get to talk to you.
Hey, well, for one, I appreciate being bunched in the group if anything else. But two, you got me feeling a little old, man. 10, 13. How old are you now? What is that?
So I'm 21 right now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so it was like it was like that upper range. I was like 13 probably when you went crazy at Stanford.
Nah, man, I appreciate it, man. Time is flying. Time is flying. We just got to get back to those days, man.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I guess I mean for you, like who were those guys that you looked up to, right, in that critical period?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I will say a lot of my first memories of just watching college football specifically. I grew up in a real NFL oriented house, if that makes sense. Like we were watching the Steve Sabol NFL film docs, playing Madden, you know what I mean? All that stuff. Of course, we played NCAA too, but the first game that I vividly remember watching is ironically USC Texas Rose Bowl. When was that? Was that 2006 Vince Young, Reggie Bush?
Yeah, the Vince Young to the corner.
Oh, yes, bro. So that to me was still to this day probably the greatest game I've ever seen. But of course, I gotta salute the after that point, getting into the YouTube days, all that stuff. You gotta salute the Reggie Bushes. You gotta salute Vince Young, Noel Devine, all those West Virginia offenses. Me and my best friend Marcus Marshall, we were literally Pat White and Steve Slayton. We used to get the same numbers on North Raleigh Bulldogs in the Pee Wee days. So that's kind of what started that love for NCAA and getting it rolling from there.
It's so funny. For my generation, it was Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin, Diggity Dog or whoever it was that put that out. And it's everyone has like that, I don't know, flashbulb highlight reel that they associate with growing up. But Steve Sabol, I won't lie, I was not expecting Steve Sabol here. I think more and more, at least so I'm in college right now. I go to the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
And you interact with the football players. I have doing media or whatever else.
Yeah.
And it's hard to judge like whether or not guys are more or less of football fans over time.
Yeah.
But it always shocks me when guys playing at the D1 level are like, "Oh yeah, I don't really watch football."
Oh, yeah, no, that's great.
But Steve Sabol is like real like deep cut old NFL films, grainy footage. So like, I mean, talk about that. Like that's really cool.
Well, I'm a big proponent, and I don't remember who I saw some. I think it was actually NBA legend. It might have been KG, Kevin Garnett, someone like that. But just talking about, and I agree with this. In order to really appreciate the game, you have to understand a big part of the history of it. You know what I mean? Even, it'll bleed into learning the fundamentals, all the other stuff that comes together. But even then, if you're just genuinely passionate about it and passionate about something, that's only going to elevate you as an individual, you as a player in the first place. So, I mean, Steve Sabol, I grew up watching, if you could think of an NFL documentary, I still think of his voice in my head. I challenge anybody who just loves the game of football. If you just go back and look at the OG clips, how they were playing, how they were getting after it, it's just, you have somewhat of just a love for where the game has come from and to the point where it is now. You know what I mean? And I accredit, I think I've said it in a couple interviews before. He is, his voice is still in my head. We used to come downstairs. My dad used to have, I don't know if it was DVD tapes, whatever it was back in the day, but we would just watch it over and over and over and over again, whichever one documentary it was. But that's just part of some of the earliest memories that I have.
Yeah. So right now, obviously it's May. There's not a whole lot to talk about in the NFL. And so as a content creator, a football content creator, I'm pretty starved for things to talk about. And so one thing I've been doing is going back and recapping old games. And it is funny. So I did like Super Bowl I and Super Bowl II. And there was a lot more character. And I think they had like a longer leash, and NFL Films did, to like show the jetpack performance before the game, or the football landing in the stands and like a mass of people going and got it. So yeah, it definitely is cool, and it's unbelievable when you hold up. I mean, as great as that was, like the production quality now and just how huge the game is. I mean, they're playing international games every year in new countries, so pretty amazing there. When you eventually figured out that you're really damn good at football and you're going to play at a high level, how did you pick Stanford? I imagine you had a choice of any school pretty much you wanted to go to. Stanford is sort of an interesting mesh of like unbelievable academics and a strong football program, even if it's not like an Alabama or a Georgia of the world.
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of touched on some of the big things where academics were really important in my household. I didn't, I wasn't a massively big recruit. You know what I mean? It was more so a lot of the offers and stuff that I had, it was to go maybe play different positions, wide receiver, switch over to defense, whatever it was. You know what I mean? At that point, I was more so at least viewed as an athlete as opposed to a running back in some of those situations. And of course, growing up, Stanford to me, since I'm from North Carolina, I wasn't really familiar with just Stanford in general. Stanford to me was like Duke, for example. We used to go to Duke all the time, had track meets at Duke. Of course, UNC was really impactful in my life, in North Carolina State. But what really sold me was just going out there for a visit. I had some experience going to California just from running track and doing different things like that. But going out there, meeting the people that were out there, I remember watching some of the Rose Bowls, all that stuff. To your point prior to us recording the conversation, those Stanford teams back in the OG days, were arguably some of the best teams in college football history. Top 10, top 20, for sure. Especially in terms of the talent on those teams. What really did it too was my host on those trips was Christian or Christian McCaffrey. And what it was I saw somebody who was equally as passionate just for the game itself, and then also extremely academic inclined. But on top of that, in terms of our body type, skill sets, I felt like I could go and do something in a similar vein. And up until that point, Stanford's lineage of backs were on the bigger side. You go Toby, all the way back to touchdown Tommy Vardell, Toby, Stephon Taylor, Tyler Gaffney. Christian was, one of the first, or at least for an extended period of time, to kind of come in there and show that we could be an offense like that and we could be utilized and we could do a bunch of different things. So he kind of opened that pathway for me. And I felt like, at least, football-wise specifically, that I could come in and have a similar impact.
You mentioned Christian. Is Christian McCaffrey, is he a psycho? I mean, as far as I never seen, I don't think a follicle of hair out of place on this guy's head. Does he eat like we eat? Or is he all walnuts? Does Christian McCaffrey ever eat a walnut?
So I will say this. I felt like he's one of those people where it's like you have a Kobe Bryant type mindset of what it takes to be great. And that's what he was. You know what I mean? He drove everybody on the team to be great, for sure, and held each other to that same standard. You know what I mean? Everything has to be, executed a certain kind of way, and we have to go about things a certain kind of way, and really led the leadership side for, that what he did for us just as a team, you can't really put it into words. And we went to the Rose Bowl and won that first year that I was there. And the big thing that I kind of equated to is him and Keller Chris. I will say this. I used to joke because that's one of my good friends too. Their diets and how they prepared, to your point, were always so specific. They both come from NFL lineages on both sides. So I'm talking about eating, waking up, eating a handful of spinach, You know what I mean? He introduced me taking magnesium, whatever it was to help prevent cramps and different stretches, whatever it may be. That's just who he is, man. And it's a credit to both of their successes for sure.
That checks out in my mind. Is he like an incredibly tidy dorm room?
So I'm not gonna talk junk about Stanford. I won't talk junk about Stanford. But I do remember they were him, Christian, Joey, and Keller. They had a shared 3-piece room in this dorm called Robley. We used to talk junk because Christian would go out there and be a Heisman finalist, but have to come back to Robley and it'd be his little, all three of them were in like a little shack. But they made do. They did the best they could. They did the best they could.
Good. It's sort of funny. I mean, I think, like one of the best indicators for success, you see it more in the NBA, but especially in the NFL, like if it's a son of a player, I'm always thinking, oh, that'll probably go well, right? You think about like Antonio Winfield and Michael Pittman and there are tons of guys in the league today. You sort of got the benefit, right, of Christian sort of showing you the ropes. Of course, he got it from Ed, and like you said, it really does matter. But seeing Christian rise to that level of stardom, how much do you think that helped you then, know how to either do the right stuff or avoid the wrong? I mean, I remember Christian McCaffrey is like, he was also, like one of those canonical members of like my childhood football memory. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this guy, Bryce Love, is right behind him. So, how much do you think that helped you?
Well, I mean, it was, of course, to be cliche, I guess, it was extremely impactful. You know what I mean? I think that the player that I don't think I would have achieved those kinds of heights if I didn't have the opportunity to sit down and learn from Christian and learn from, like I mentioned earlier, how he prepared, how he thought about the game, how he looked at the game. I think him coupled with, I had Coach G, which wasn't his running back coach, but both of them kind of came in and shifted that perspective of it's one thing to be talented and it's another thing to work in a focused way, prepare in a focused way, and then execute in a focused way. And that mindset, of course, even just coupled from belief in the first place, you know what I mean? Just being able to see him day in and day out do the things that he was able to do, especially coming from my recruiting background, just being like, oh, okay, I can go out here and compete too. You know what I mean? I can go out here and get after it in this pro-style system as well. So, I can't, I always speak so highly and can't really put it into words just of his impact on not only me, and not only me on the field, but just me as a person in general.
Were you nervous to sort of step in? Like you got I think, what did you go, 5th overall, something like that? Yeah. I mean, like sort of accepted that there was a pretty good football player in front of you at Stanford. So, what was the psyche like there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, I had little moments, I guess, that kind of, I always get nervous. You know what I mean? I think, I get nervous just whatever it may be. Now, football was kind of an outlet for that. But I'd say the big thing was I had different opportunities kind of just along the way. Not only seeing him do the things that he did, had a start, I want to say that was 2016, going into Notre Dame. So I'm going into South Bend, first start, you know what I mean, as a player. So I had different. Yeah.
Sorry, you remember who was on that defense? Was there anyone that would like jump out? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so I want to say, I do know they had Julian Love. He was out there. Jalen Smith, I want to say, had left the year before. So that was a different beast back in those days. There's a couple other guys that were ballers on that defense as well. But even then, I mean, just going into, you're like me. We think about Notre Dame as one of the blue bloods of college football for sure. So going into Notre Dame as a sophomore, no starting experience, kind of thrown into the fire for the most part. I think that led or helped build the foundation out for how the 2017 year went.
Yeah, and then 2017 year went well. It was, I think, the most yards for any running back through 4 games in FBS history. Ended with 2,100, and at least it was 19 rushing touchdowns. So it was better than any year Christian ever put up. For what it's worth. Not that we're keeping track, but I mean, you obviously had this confidence, right? Like you said, you had your moments before that, but was it sort of surreal to just, I mean, suddenly like the Heisman is coming into play and everything like that? Like, what was that like to just keep putting game after game together, that just these unbelievable performances?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hardest part of it all, where that's where the difficulty is. Of course, most people would probably agree with that, is just being able to do it week in and week out, different opponents, all that good stuff. For me, it was, at the end of the year, it was extremely surreal. Like, I didn't even know when like the ceremony was. Like, we went to Atlanta to go to the College Football Awards show. I didn't know about that until, that was like a couple days in advance. What helped me a lot, and I felt like even to this day, is that I really compartmentalized just what was important in the moment and ultimate goals. Now, I had always prayed and wanted the opportunity, played NCAA, road to glory, all that good stuff. But to actually be in those seats and be in those moments were extremely, surreal, for lack of better words. But even beyond that, week in and week out, just trying to stay offline, trying to not be on, watch ESPN or anything like that.
I was going to ask about that. But I mean, now, right, everything, you could probably bet on whoever is going to win the Heisman, right, at any moment. Yeah. But then it's like, it's probably out there if you want to know. Yeah. And surely people were telling you, but is it like a Hogwarts letter that hits your door? Like, how do you know then that you're going to New York, you're going to meet these people, like, and actually get a chance to win that thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what Nick Saban talks about, or Coach Saban talks about with the hype stuff. It's rap poison. So I tried not to pay attention to any of that. But how it worked for me was, we had the player director side of Stanford football at that time, Alan George, Matt Doyle, Mike Eubanks. All of them were more so, I think they got a call. You know what I mean? And then I got shot a text to like make sure you're watching SportsCenter or something like that, at least Heisman specifically, to see, if you were a finalist. I might have been in the locker room at that point in time, but it was kind of, honestly, for, what it was. It wasn't a really big, like, it wasn't a personal phone call or anything like that. And that might have been just the player director side kind of just protected me as the athlete. But I was just chilling in the locker room, eating the Uncrustable. You know what I mean? Probably just watching TV. And, from there that was probably just a couple days in advance, and then just got on a flight and just headed out there, and that's all she wrote.
So do you hate Baker Mayfield?
Oh, no. Nah. See, Baker, for him and his family, were just some of the nicest, coolest people. I've everybody I met that weekend. You see it more so now, but back then, people, the narratives were what the narratives were. But I mean, even reflecting back, I mean, he was a great guy. It wasn't, it was, at that point, it was kind of obvious that he was going to win it, but everybody treated everybody with kindness. I mean, Lamar and his family were also amazing. I mean, it's hard to, it is really hard for a running back to win the Heisman.
I was going to say, dude, you're better than me. If I ran for 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns and I don't win the Heisman, I'm having words with Baker Mayfield. I have a problem with that guy for the rest of my life.
See, it's tough, though, because at the same time, you have to see what he threw for what was that, like 60 touches, something crazy that year? You know what I mean? So
there was nothing you could have done, Bryce.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I mean, especially, Ashton Genty's year too. Not to say Travis didn't deserve the Heisman himself, but it's just really, and that's a conversation too, just really hard nowadays for a running back to kind of set himself out and be able to show what, be able to have the opportunity. It kind of means that other positions have to have a down year in order to get the opportunity to win it. But yeah, it is difficult for sure.
You alluded to it a little bit, but I mean that Heisman race, Lamar Jackson, Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, even Roquan Smith got a vote. I don't know if all of them went to New York, but did you get a chance to be around them in that setting?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, we had a bunch of different events for me, Lamar, Baker while we were out there. So we spent a lot of different time together for sure. Saquon, Jonathan, I got to meet at the I want to say that was the Atlanta College Football Awards. Now, I mean, everything you see about all these people, everybody I met were all just incredible people, incredible families. I mean, I don't have necessarily the opportunity to play anymore, but being able to see the things that they've been able to accomplish, the things that they've been able to go out there and do, and the highs that they've reached, it's inspiring for me in different ways, and appreciative because those people are, so deserving of the things that they've accomplished for sure.
So after that whole ceremony, I imagine again it's hard not to pay attention to what's out there.
Yeah.
What was your understanding of sort of your draft value?
After that ceremony, I think I received because after your junior year, you at those times I don't know about now, but you could send a letter or something to the NFL and then get information back.
Like appraise you.
Yeah, like about what value was. I want to say it was. I think I had second to third round projections somewhere in that ballpark. Somewhere in there. I want to say I don't exactly remember, but I think it was in that area, that range.
Dang. What's a guy got to do to go first round? That's great. But okay, so then obviously coming off this great season, you have that second or third round possibility. So talk to me a little bit about your decision to return to Stanford.
Yeah. So a lot went into it. You know what I mean? For one, Stanford academically was and is, I mean, one of the best institutions in the world. I also really wanted the opportunity to come back and compete. Of course, my biggest dreams were to play in the NFL and do all those different kinds of things. Of course, to have that opportunity, but at the same time, I was so focused on the things that I wanted to do at Stanford that more so took the forefront. You know what I mean? I felt like the team we had coming back, the coaching we had coming back, put us in a position to compete at a high level. Of course, it didn't go that way. You know what I mean? We fought injuries, fought doing different things, and we didn't achieve the things that we wanted to. But that was probably the biggest thing that went into that decision driver.
Was there one on the field moment across your whole career that stands out to you? Like maybe one game that do you have kids?
I don't have kids. I got a little French bulldog though. I
Okay, all right. So like you sit the French bulldog up in front of the computer and you say, "Watch this game right here." Like, what is that for you?
Dag, I'd probably say probably UW 2017, or University of Washington back 2017. I think they were at the time top 10. I think we were top 20, and they had one of the, if not the best defenses in the entire country. And I had up until that point, I had never seen a human being as big as Vita Vea in person. Oh, that was. I mean, we had a lot of fun that game, and of course we ended up winning. So I'd go with that one.
You remember your stat line?
I want to say it's probably over 100 yards, maybe like 115, 120, somewhere in there. It was a bunch of carries though. It was we were out there fighting, man. It was a battle for sure. So somewhere in there.
What did you feel like was the best part of your game?
So I think, to be specific, one thing that I always used to really work on, like I felt like I was blessed with a lot of speed. I of course worked on it fairly often, of course. But the one thing that I knew I had to get better at, and I always tried to, this kind of comes from Christian, Coach G, being really specific about the weak points just of how you play the game and how you should go about addressing them, was I wanted to get quicker, but specifically in saying being quicker, getting stronger in like single leg plyos, single leg, being able to jump cut off one leg, ended up on another, and be able to get as vertical as fast as possible. So I think that's one thing that I really worked on from the point I got to campus into my later years. So I'd say, of course, I feel like I was explosive, like I was able to kind of put it together at times.
You
But
were.
yeah, and
I can say it. You don't have to be humble.
And we get there. I think the one thing too that I didn't get as much credit for was just contact balance in general. So I mean, I felt like, especially for how big I was, like I wasn't, I was probably 190 soaking wet for the most part my junior year, but I felt like contact balance, like I was able to kind of, win the leverage battle to an extent, and get creative ways of doing that to kind of always, not always, but as good as I could, end up finishing upfield.
You mentioned working on getting faster. That's a
Yeah.
real thing. You can do that.
Yeah.
So like, give me. I mean, like, all right, at your absolute naturally, right? Let's say you never did any
Yeah.
like speed specific work. What's your 40?
Ooh. I was a solid 4.3 guy. I was a solid 4.3 guy. Solid. And I don't know, you know what I mean? I never got to run like a NFL draft. I commit to 6 months and I'm just running as fast as a 40 as I could. But I think I was 10, not 10, but 4.3 range, 4.3 range, somewhere in there.
Did you ever feel like? I mean, did you ever get caught from behind out there?
See, I'm not gonna lie. See, it be I don't know. Sometimes people just have good angles. You know what I'm saying? You just got to be
Yeah.
fast enough on that angle. So maybe. I'm
then-
sure there's some kind of clip out there, hidden away. Maybe somewhere.
You mentioned Vita Vea. Is there anyone else that stands out to you as far as on the field? It could be even, offensive, but you're like sharing the field with them. Who stands out as like, whoa, that's whoever out there.
Ooh. So it's different now because I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of a lot of those guys are still playing at a high level now. I said Vita Vea, Julian Love, on those Notre Dame teams. I forget, but there were a couple safeties at Utah who were really good. I'll kind of say, to answer your question, maybe not a player specifically, but what was always really hard from just, I know you'll understand from an analytical side, but what was really hard for me were box count safeties. So safeties who may just play at the line of scrimmage, because 99% of the run plays that we had, he was unaccounted for. So he could kind of insert in different ways, and if it was a guy who wasn't afraid to get physical, then it was just going to be a long day. So those Utah guys in 2017 were really, really good at doing that. So I'd say, a mix of safeties. I already said Vita Vea, Julian Love. There were a couple other guys, off the top of my head, on my side of the ball, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I said Keller, Daniel Marks, which was a fullback. Shout out my fullbacks. It's a dying breed, but we show love. Yeah, I mean, of course, on the offensive line too, we had some dogs. So I'd say a mix of all those guys.
How about one favorite highlight?
Oh, that's tough.
You got one play. This is Bryce Love, the football player.
One play. So off the top of my head, I will say it was a play in 2018. It wasn't a touchdown, but it was versus Oregon in a game we ended up coming back to win the game. I want to say we did come back and win that game. I think that was the same game I'm thinking of. But it was on the goal line. It was on the goal line. I want to say it was second or third quarter. And it was just a turning point to say, okay, this is going to be where we plant the flag and we're going to start actually coming back to win this thing. And what it was a duo play to the right, just a couple jump cuts, a couple broken tackles. But from there, I felt like a lot of the energy just shifted on the team to say, okay, we got a shot to get this ball rolling. So I'll point to that off the top of my head.
Yeah. And how about, just, be candid with me. Like, is it annoying when people, ask you like the same set of questions of like about the injury, the ACL tear. Does that get under your skin a little bit?
Nah. So I mean, I think it's a part of the journey. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think one of the big things just for players in general, and I'm still going through it myself, is just kind of that transition away from the sport. You know what I mean? I think, of the blessing sides of it as opposed to the negatives. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still able to walk and do all these different kind of things. I still have my mind, you know what I mean, to think through different things. I think the harder part is just missing sports in general. So I've had, I get to do ACC Network and do different things with ESPN, so I get exposure that way, and it kind of scratches that itch. But even then, you always miss that competing side of things. You know what I mean? And the injury, gave a lot of perspective just to life in general, which I'm grateful for. So I don't, talking about it doesn't affect me as much now as it probably did back in the day, just because of circumstance and time heals the wounds. But it's been a journey, and at the end of the day, I'm grateful for where the journey's at least dropped me off right now, if nothing else.
And I mean, a lot of ways, like it was, all right, it was the last game of your college career, which
Yeah.
is the worst time it could happen in some ways, as far as if you're talking about the NFL. But it's also like you got the most out of that college time. You got 4 years of college football, an entire season, even if that 2018 year wasn't quite as dynamic.
Yeah.
I think there is still something to be said for totally completing that story.
Yeah.
You go on to the NFL, though. I mean, talk to me about from that last game to the draft. Like, what was that like? What was going through your mind? It's a dream come true. Obviously,
Yeah.
some more than maybe other guys are dealing with, right? Some more factors, but still, did you ever have to stop yourself and be like, no, this is a wonderful thing?
Yeah. So I mean, it was to the first point you made. Yeah, it was kind of a poetic, wrap it with a bow. Hurt last game winning drive. You know what I mean? 5 yards. It was on a power play, ironically, which is my favorite play. So it kind of wrapped that with a bow and a ribbon. You know what I mean? But the transition to the NFL and preparing for the NFL draft, I mean, it was difficult because I had surgery and I was rehabbing for 99% of it, so I wasn't able to necessarily participate in a lot of those things that I would have otherwise. But it was still, I mean, it was still surreal. I mean, it's an interesting experience in itself to kind of, you hear all those crazy draft interview questions and experiences.
Did you get any?
Yeah, no. So I didn't get any crazy. But you hear those experiences, and of course you get nervous, and you're up all night, and in my case, you have to do all these different medicals and MRIs and all these different things day to day. So that was interesting and unique. And of course, again, I keep talking about the blessing side, but it is the truth to even be drafted in the first place under the circumstances of knowing that, I wasn't going to play that first year, no matter what. But even getting drafted, being able to have the opportunity to rehab with all those guys, with the Commanders at that point in time, building those relationships, being able to sit in the locker room, got to be around Adrian Peterson, for example, the legend of the sport, amongst those other guys in my draft class. It was a great time. It was a cool experience. Wish I could have played, but still.
I definitely want to ask you about him, but was there, in the combine, you're doing the interviews, a team that you thought either I have a good chance of going here, or man, I'd like to go there?
Ooh. So I'd say Rams for sure, just because of how much I love Coach McVay uses running backs in general and how versatile they're able to be out there. And ironically now my college coach is the running back coach up there, Coach G. So and he's able to obviously coach all those guys up there. So I'd say the Rams for sure. Coach McVay. Who else can I think of? I'll go with the Rams. I'll stick with the Rams. Yeah. I'll go with them.
So then you get to Washington, and organization at that time had sort of a tumultuous reputation. You had not even a full season of Jay Gruden, right? So this was a team that was really struggling. So what was that like? What was your sense of sort of the culture, both from the fan side of things, but also players, coaches, everything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm from North Carolina, so I had been to DC a bunch of different times, and I think the big thing is, the fans had expectations on what they wanted, and the being able to come in and witness that and be a part of that. And I think the biggest transition is you're going from college to being a professional. So what does that entail as being a professional? You don't have those same obligations day to day to, or at least you're not going to have a coach that's going to be, you know, on you about doing your weights, doing your preparation, all this other stuff. A lot of that is just by yourself. You know what I mean? And training camp is this different beast. You're not grinding a Coach Shaw 2 a day, like back in the day. It's not going to be that. It's going to be about preparing your body and getting as prepared as you can. And I think it was a transition for sure. And I think that of course, like you mentioned, I didn't have Coach Gruden that long. I'm grateful for the opportunity him and everybody else was involved in picking me up. But it was a tumultuous time. You know what I mean? It was a lot of different things, that just came out and all this other stuff and whatever else to where it is. And but I'm happy to be a fan and for where the organization is kind of ended up with right now. And it's definitely cool to have Coach Rivera too.
Yeah, that 2019 Commanders team though started 0-5.
Yeah.
So an NFL locker room, these guys have been the best at what they do from the time they were kids, all the way up until adulthood, and now they're relying on this to feed their families and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so when you keep on losing, what was that like? What was sort of that boiling point before eventually Gruden was fired?
Yeah, so it was a lot of similar things, I guess, just that fans may have felt too in that moment. Just frustrations with everything. You know what I mean? Like it's when you're not where you want to be as a team, and also you have all this other stuff bleeding into the organization as well. Like it gets frustrating. You know what I mean? And I think that I don't remember exactly the turnaround or what was the game specifically, but I think a lot of the leadership just coming together and kind of just planting the flag to say, okay, well, we're in control of the season and how things are going to end up going, regardless of who's brought in, regardless of, coaching at this point in time and all this other stuff. We really just leaned into that and, let the chips fall where they did.
Every once in a while, I always think of Victor Wembanyama right now for this one, but he's essentially like perfect athletes. And then every once in a while, there is someone who just looks different, right? You scan in the field, and who is that guy? Who was that in the NFL for you?
Ooh. And it doesn't have to be teammate?
No, anyone.
Okay. So
let's do teammate first. Was there a teammate first?
So I will say, now obviously I didn't play in the SEC, but being around Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen at the time, Montez Sweat, I mean, the D-line was just a different beast. I mean, that was probably the highlight of the team at that point in time. But even before that, Adrian Peterson, being able to see Adrian Peterson was just, I mean, he's just a different kind of, you know what I mean? When you see, to your point, the Victor Wembanyama's, when you see that, you just know it when you see it. And AP was 6'2", built like a brick wall, you know what I'm saying? And, I mean, it was surreal to see how he prepared, how he practiced. Another one, at least in this day and age, it's a little bit biased because I played with him in high school, but would be Dexter Lawrence. And he, to this day, when I was, we met obviously in our younger days, freshman, sophomore year, I had never seen somebody that big. At the time, he was like 280. You know what I mean? But being able to be around him now, and I think we joke, he's probably like 330, 340, somewhere in that ballpark. But he's still probably the biggest human that I get to be around, at least these days.
I want to ask about Adrian Peterson because he was, in my time as a football fan, I saw the end, right? I saw he was still probably putting up 12, 1,300 yard seasons in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But you'd always seen the highlights of like running over the Steelers or the Browns. Is he another guy where he's very particular about everything that goes in his body, like eating?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to be at that level. You know what I mean? As great as we acknowledge him to be, I even feel like in this day and age, he's a little bit underrated in terms of just the all-time player, running back that he was in those days at his peak. But I mean, he's just one of those guys too, where it's like, you know, we talked about it. It's just something different about him, you know, and how he prepared too is a lot. It's very similar to how Christian and all the other great players go about preparing, go about thinking about the game, going about even details as small as footwork were all just critical to everything that we did. But I mean, that's a testament to who he was and how great he was.
Was the sense of sort of community and brotherhood stronger in college or the NFL?
I'd say so. It's different, and in my
I would think college,
yeah,
but I don't know.
that's what I'm saying. So it's different for me because I wasn't, I was spending a lot of time rehabbing and all that stuff for the most part. Like I was cool with a lot of the rookie class and a lot of those guys I had immediate interactions with. But it's tough too in the NFL because you have guys coming in and going. Coming in and going out. You have P squad guys that may be here one day, may be gone the next day. It's tough to now your core group, like if you're, have a long contract or you're a tenured player, whatever it may be, even then there's no guarantees, but you have that ability to kind of be stationary and have those kinds of connections. But at least in college, I was in college pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, pre all that other stuff. So it was rare for somebody to leave. You know what I mean? So we were locked in 4 or 5 years together. So to your point, I mean, I'm a roll with college for sure.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just like a different level of pressure and everything. And not everyone in college is going to go. I mean, very few are even going to go on and play in the NFL. All right, I got a quick exercise here just for, you mentioned Peterson. Start, bench, cut?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let's do start, bench, cut in Bryce Love's world, sort of adjacent. So we're going to give you Christian McCaffrey.
Okay.
Adrian Peterson.
Okay.
Saquon Barkley.
Okay. Dang, that's tough. So I'll say this. I think the easiest one is going to be start. I think you got to roll with Adrian Peterson just for who he was at his peak. You got to show respect to the game, especially because the other two are still ongoing.
Yes. Does it matter that he couldn't catch the football like those guys can?
That's what I was going to say. It would depend to what scheme we're going to do. But I don't think in in the past couple years that, I mean, he's probably in my lifetime, not even probably. I mean, there hasn't been a running back be able to kind of just take over consistently in games as prime, 2012 AP coming off ACL tears, all that other stuff. So, I mean, he was carrying teams that, weren't even necessarily throwing the ball in the generation where throwing the ball was the big thing to the playoffs and doing all these other kinds of things. So I think, you got to show respect to the game and where it's come from. Now, the next one, I am biased. I think you do got to roll with Christian just for the things. I think both of them are amazing in the pass game, but I think that Christian just genuinely, if he wanted to, he could play slot receiver. You know what I mean? If today he didn't want to play running back and didn't want to, take those hits between the tackles and all that other stuff, he could split out wide and for the next 5-6 years be a similar to a Julian Edelman, Westwell, whatever slot receiver you kind of want to go with. He could do that for another 5, 6, 7 years. So I'll roll with Christian at the start position and then Ron. That's a tough list though. That's a tough list. But I think, I show respect to the OGs. So
Saquon out on the street, cut.
It's tough. It's still
It is.
Look, he's probably, he's up there for my favorite players in the league, man. So it's not an easy decision. I am a little biased though, I will admit.
Winding down your career in Washington, what would you say your relationship was like with football, sort of at the very end?
Well, it was a love hate kind of thing where football to that point had given me pretty much everything that it could give me at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't necessarily have been able to go to Stanford if it wasn't for sports. I wouldn't have, had the opportunity to learn all the things that I had, the experiences that I have. And I loved football so much, and I'm still to this day, I have just a passion for the game. So it's transitioned a little bit, but it's still figuring out a ways to be involved in whatever way I can. If it is, with local people, just playing sports, and I feel that obligation to give back to the game, and watching the sport or going through film or kind of just sharing how I think about the game, whatever it may be. That's kind of what it's transitioned into, obviously, because I can't play. But I mean, I will always have the utmost love and respect for the game.
And I guess now, I mean, it's still in your life as an analyst and everything like that. But how about outside of football? Like, what are you still, hoping to do, and sort of, your ideas and how you've sort of separated football from your life as a whole?
Yeah, so I the big thing is thinking about and taking the things that sports and football specifically have given me and just applying it to the real world. You know what I mean? I think that one of the hardest things just for myself, athletes in general, and I'm still going through it, is just that transition aspect of, what am I going to do next? What are we, what does that look like? What am I going to be involved with? So for me, like I'm passionate about investing in startups, passionate about, of course, real estate, finance, whatever it may be, leaning into my Stanford friends for sure. But it is tough. It's tough figuring out, we have all these skills that are applicable to different things, but, how do you focus that and figure out what other things you're passionate about and what other ways? Because as a player, maybe while you're in the NFL late stages when you kind of come into the end of it, but for the most part, in order, at least for me, to get to that point, you have to be hyper focused. And I was always a great student, but you have to be hyper focused on football and training and how what sacrifices am I going to be willing to make to get to the point that I want to be. So once you kind of step away from football, and it happens with everybody, is figuring out what else you're passionate about and kind of making a career out of that. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey, but I've been enjoying it.
Do you have a mantra or a quote that you frequently come back to?
Oh, dang, that's a good one. I wish I had prepared one. I don't have.
No, that's on me. That I put you on the spot.
I wish
That's
I had.
unfair.
Because I know I have, on my phone, I have a good bit of notes and quotes.
I mean,
Right?
take your time. Like, I mean, if you want, but no worries. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and it was great to talk to you. And good luck with everything post football. Still continuing with football.
Yeah.
And, appreciate it.
Nah, absolutely. I appreciate you giving me some time, man.